a warm welcome for Kelly Mena.
Thank you. So, hi everyone, I'm Kelly Mena. I work with B&H. I'm in the marketing department, and I've been doing wedding videography for about 7 years now. I've run a high-end studio before. I know a lot of different facets when it comes to wedding videography, from dealing with clients to how to shoot to how to edit. I've done everything from the nuts to bolts to everything in between. It's kind of crazy how much I've done in the 7 years. But I just want to do a little quick thing about me. I have a psychology degree, so a lot of what I do and a lot of how I shoot, I'm interested in people. You know, I'm interested in observing people and seeing the way they go about their day and seeing and finding stories and capturing that and editing that and putting that together. So after I got my psychology degree, what I did was I immediately started doing film at Maine Media Workshops. So if you guys ever look into Maine Media Workshops, it's this incredible place in Maine that you work 17-hour days, like 2 months at a time. I did this intense workshop where we basically made 20 shorts in 2 months. It was incredible. You learn everything from directing to shooting to lighting to gripping. Anything that you can possibly want to learn, you could learn there. And so after I did that, I ended up going and doing film and just being on film sets and working as a grip and working as a DP, working as a camera assistant. And then I started to actually manage a studio in Soho. And when I managed that studio in Soho, we did high-end weddings for celebrities. We did high-end weddings for people who just wanted their wedding video to look more cinematic, to look a little more like a movie, to look like a music video. That's what I tend to focus on. I'm going to talk a little bit about the different styles that you can do. I'm going to talk a little bit about what developing your style and what interests you and how you want to approach actually shooting and editing your videos. When I was managing the studio, I dealt with a lot of different kinds of clients, and they're going to have their opinions, and they're going to want to, as everybody over here that I'm looking at, that's part of Leva, is looking at me going, yeah, I know. They're going to want their own music. They're going to want to tell you how they want it edited. They're going to want to tell you how to shoot me. This is my best side. I look better in this light. And you're going to nod and smile and understand, but also know that you might know better and that they're actually going to like what you produce. But you also have to, you have to kind of balance it out. You really are, because you want to please your client, but you also want to produce a product that you're proud of. So you kind of have to balance it out. I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. Just to show you a little bit of what my work is, as I said, I do montages. So what I do is I kind of create music videos throughout the day. I have a beginning, middle, and end. I usually capture the getting ready. I capture the ceremony. I capture the reception. But I'm going through the day as a photographer almost. I look at the visuals the way a photographer would. I'm looking at composition, I'm looking at lighting, I'm looking at the different ways that I can make this picture look pretty and beautiful and how that's moving and flowing. And then I also consider the story and how these shots build up to that story. So videography as an art form, that's how I view the work that I do. A lot of people have a stereotype of what a wedding videographer is, and we talk about this in Leva all the time. People think about us like the video that we watched where, you know, we're with our fanny packs over in the corner tinkering with things, and they don't know what we're doing, and we're in the way. And this is just a stereotype that you constantly have to combat when you're trying to sell yourself, you're trying to sell your product. I'm a fly on the wall. I'm trying to kind of to emphasize that I'm not going to be there. I want to form a connection with my client when I'm prepping for the actual wedding itself. I want them to know I'm there for them. I'm there to make them look good. I'm there to make them, you know, enjoy their day as well. I want them to look at their video and remember the moments and not remember me being in their face. You know, you want to kind of work around that. You want to make sure you're not actually interrupting the moments that you're trying to capture. So just a little quick sample of my work. The thing I kind of keep in mind whenever I'm shooting a wedding is to kind of move like a photographer, but to think like a storyteller. And that's a little bit of what I was talking about originally. When I'm behind the camera, I'm composing my shots, I'm thinking about lighting, I'm thinking about angles and different shots that I'm gonna get medium wide and covering the wedding in a certain kind of way visually. And I would actually suggest looking at photographers, looking at like high-end wedding photographers and actually looking at the way that they look at lighting, the way that they compose, the way that they actually go about shooting to make their clients look a certain way and to give a certain aesthetic. But you also have to keep in mind that you're making a video and it's different. There's a lot that goes into that. Going back a little bit to the cliche of the wedding videographer with the fanny pack in the corner trying to like get quick shots and being in everybody's way, it's an art form. You know, it really is. You have to be a visual person and you have to be a storyteller. You have to be able to compose the shot, and on top of that you have to be able to create a story later with your edit. So when you're shooting, you're composing, but you're also thinking, how is this story coming together? Where's the beginning? Where's the middle? Where's the end? How do I create tension? What do we love about movies? There are climaxes, there are sad moments, there are exciting moments. So much happens in a wedding that you can make into an overall movie of the day. And you can really emphasize certain moments through your edits, and you can emphasize certain moments through the way that you shoot certain things. Shooting more and editing more. If you're not editing what it is you're shooting and you have editors for you, I highly suggest that you at least edit a couple of them, because it gives you a better idea as a shooter of what it is that you're gonna need at the end of the day, how much footage you're gonna need, how much filler you're gonna need, or if you have a second shooter, how to work with them and delegate what it is that they need to capture, so that when you come home or you come to your studio and you're putting this together, you're not like, oh, I wish I had that shot, or I wish I had something to put here. You wanna make sure that you have everything that you're gonna need to tell the story. And the more that you edit, you're gonna have a better understanding of when you're shooting, what you can do with in-camera. Like you can pull things out of focus and create a cross dissolve later, or you can, do something within the camera, overexpose something in order to make an interesting transition within your edit. And the more you edit, the more you're gonna understand how you wanna shoot the wedding. So just a little bit about thinking like a photographer. You wanna think about your composition, you wanna think about your lighting, you want to think about using your environment. These people are getting married at a certain venue or at a certain location for a specific reason. It's a vineyard, it's New York City, it's whatever it is, it's for a reason. They chose that location because it was a certain kind of feeling, a certain kind of environment that they wanted to always remember being in when they had that day with their special someone. So you really want to make sure to capture the environment, you want to capture establishing shots, you want to capture things that note where they are and the feeling of that day. And we're going to talk a little bit about creating your own style, which has a lot to do with the kind of wedding videography that you do. So is it a documentary style? Is it cinematic, like the way I do, where I make montages and I make music videos throughout the day? That's going to influence how you shoot the wedding. That's going to influence how you edit the wedding. It's going to create your style, and it's going to create what people know you as. Does your studio do cinematic things and it's more montagey, or do you do interviews? Do you take voice bites and you take little sound bites throughout the day and interlace that throughout your edit in order to propel the story? There's a lot of different ways that you can be creative to actually promote the kind of style that you want to be known for. So a couple of things to think about when you're composing. Rule of thirds. Each frame and each I actually have a slide that will show you where the lines would go for a rule of thirds. I'm sure a lot of you know this. I don't know, how many photographers are in the room? Are there any photographers? Okay, so you probably have heard of the rule of thirds. You want to make certain points within your frame points of interest so that you're composing a certain way that really catches the eye. I'm going to talk a little bit about leading space. When you're shooting, you want to make sure that if you're trying to shoot two people talking together and you have one person in a shot, that you have some leading room when this person is looking over here off the frame, because it will show and intends you to really feel like there's another person on the other side that they're looking at. And if you have the reverse shot, you want the leading space to be here so that that person seems like they're talking to that person and looking at that person. And that has a lot to do with eye line as well. So if you are shooting two people, I have a couple of clips here. I have a groom looking lovingly at his bride. I have some leading space. I have some leading space on her so that she can see him, and their eye lines connect. They're not even in the same building. So that's something that you can do when you're shooting. You can actually create a moment that wasn't necessarily there, but mimics and emphasizes the whole feeling of the day, the love that these two people have, and the look that they would give each other. They're in completely different rooms. They just finished getting ready, and they're actually like looking at the people in the room that are talking to them, but I was able to create a situation where it actually looked like they were looking at each other. The eye lines match I'm on this side of them, so you don't want to cross the line. Has anybody here heard of crossing the line? Okay, so it's basically a 180-degree axis that you're thinking about. You have a person here looking at the person over here. If you're shooting these two people, you want to make sure to stay on the same side. So if you're shooting from here, you want to make sure to be grabbing that person from here, and the person standing here, you want to make sure to be still on the same line. Because if you jump over here, it's actually going to feel like a jump. You're going to edit that together, and it's not going to orient the way that you actually think it should. And my psychology comes back in here because I think about when you're editing, it's actually a representation of the visual experience, how we visualize the world, how we see the world. We look at people when we're looking at them, we're looking at that person talking to that person. We can't be on both sides. We're looking here, and then we're looking here. I'm not here looking at this person, then when I look over at this person, all of a sudden I've jumped to the other side. I would even suggest if you guys are editing and you're just getting started editing and stuff like that, or just getting started shooting, do that. Break the rules to see why you have to keep to the rules, so that you can really see why something's jumpy or see why something doesn't necessarily work. Play with that a little bit to get a better understanding of why wouldn't I do it the other way? Why wouldn't I break this rule? You have to know your rules before you can break them. And we'll talk about breaking them because that's the most fun part. So lighting. In my videos, I use a lot of natural light. I try not to be obtrusive at all. I try not to set up any lights or anything like that. I'm a very fly on the wall, and I'm a one-man band, generally. I have second shooters that I hire occasionally and stuff like that, and I've worked with second shooters a lot. But typically, I book myself, and it's just me, and I'm thinking of myself as shooter A and shooter B. And I have to keep that in mind when I'm shooting, and I can't have too many lights with me. But there's so much that you can do with just natural lighting. You can create flare, you can overexpose. You could also see from that leading picture, that leading footage that I showed you, how the background was completely washed out and overexposed. That's something stylized. That's something that's very specific to what it is that I do, because I like to make it look dreamy. I like to make music videos that look like just romantic dreams floating, and I choose music based on that. Knowing your style is a huge aspect of how it is that you're going to approach and attack your edit and the way that you shoot your weddings. So if you don't use basically natural lighting, you would use that during the day. Overexposing for those time periods in the day, ideal time periods would be like magic hour at the end of the day, when everything's orange or everything's purple and the sky is great color and things like that. But sometimes you have to deal with harsh light, and that doesn't look too pretty. I overexpose sometimes for that, to give that dreamy effect, but also because it's hard sometimes to shoot in the middle of the day, and you have that harsh light coming in, and kind of the best, most aesthetically pleasing way of going about shooting that would be to overexpose. If you're not using, when you're at reception, clearly you're not gonna be able to use natural light. It's a huge issue. How many people have already shot weddings and have been in a reception situation where they've had issues with lighting and things like that? You need lights. You need to have an onboard light. You need to have something. You're not going to be able to see anyone, or you're going to have to bump up your gain, and everything's going to be crazy, and then you're going to have to be like, no, it's my style. I swear, this is the look I was going for. I thought you liked it, and you don't want to have that happen. So just a couple of reminders about environment. Environmental lighting and establishing your environment. You can use light to do that. I shot at a vineyard, and it was magic hour, and we were excited because we were getting this beautiful light coming in. It was this orange and then purple, and it's like every 5 minutes it would change colors, and it was gorgeous. And that's ideal. You can use natural light for that. I like to set up with the client actually beforehand, if they're already setting up with a photographer, what time period they want to take pictures and stuff like that. I like to maybe meet the photographer beforehand and talk about shooting at a certain time, so that you can really capture the best light of the day and make it the most romantic that it can be. And if you work with your photographer as closely as you can, sometimes there are issues, unfortunately. I hear the snickers, I know. Like people getting into each other's shots, things happen, you try to be as amicable as possible. But if you could even have a friendship with your photographer, that's ideal, because then you can make ideal situations happen, like shooting when the light is beautiful. So for those times where you can't actually use natural light and you have to use some kind of onboard light, I have a few suggestions for you guys. So the roto light is a light that you can actually, it has a hole in the middle of it, and you can actually either put it on top of your camera with a hot shoe, which it has an adapter, or you can actually, if you want to save space, and just put it around your shotgun mic. That's also a possibility. It can come in different kits, and the basic kit comes with some CTO and diffusion and ND, and all you have to do is pop it out and put it in. And it's a nice light for the price point. I'm going to show you a bit more expensive ones. They're going to increase a little bit, but they also have more options. They're dimmable. As the lights get more complicated, you're going to have more features. to continue with the suggested lights, this is one that I just recently found out about and I'm really excited about, the ICANN light. This is one that you can actually put on board and you can put on top of your camera, but it also stacks, which is really cool because you can stack it on top of your camera, or you can actually stack a bunch of them and create a larger light source. And you can go behind the couple, you can create filler light, you can have an assistant run around and actually create a silhouette for you. There are various different things that you can do when you can like have a light that you can connect and then use as like as we would say on a set, you could use it and Hollywood it. You would have an assistant Hollywood it, which really just means hand holding something, which is great because then you can just basically use your assistant as a human light stand and have them exactly where you want them, whenever you want them, and direct them with the light. So another light that I really love is the light panel. Do any of you have any of these lights by any chance? Okay, very cool. So this one, what's great about it is that it's dimmable. It's daylight balance, but you can actually get filters for it. You can get CTO, you can get diffusion. But the great thing about it is that it's dimmable, because when you're in a reception, you don't want to have this insanely bright light. If it's the first dance, sure, they get that. You know, you want to capture it, you want to make sure they want that moment filmed. But throughout the night, as they're drinking, as they're dancing, as they're having fun, they don't want a bright light in their face. And what's great about something that you can dim is that you can choose when you need a bright light and when is the appropriate time to have a bright light. And you can dim it for when you just need to be able to expose for your camera, but you don't want to actually interrupt the couple in the time that they're having, or may be obnoxious at all to the actual family that's having a good time. So another light is the blender from Lowell, which also, oh, look at you, look at you. Tiffin, Mark from Tiffin, everyone, is right here. He represents Lowell as well. He's very excited. So the low light is really cool because you can actually not only change and dim it, but you can actually change the color temperature. So if you're outside, you can make it more daylight. If you're inside, you can make it a little more orangey to match the lighting within the actual venue. So as these additions, as these adjustments add on, the price adds on as well, but they become things that you can control in the environment. They become investments that are worth it at the end of the day because it's making your life simpler as you're capturing this event. And the more you shoot, the easier it becomes, but shooting weddings is hard. Who's shot weddings? It's hard work. When you're a videographer especially, I'm not to down photographers at all, because I know that their job is very, very difficult as well, and we're all getting each other's shots and it's all crazy and everything's happening all at once. But we're capturing things in real time, people. You know, a speech only happens once, and it happens from A to point B. I can't just have one good shot of the groom doing his speech. I need to capture it from the very beginning to the very end with nothing going wrong. And you want to make sure that your equipment is there for you. You want to make sure you have backups. You want to make sure that even if you can't afford to have another camera, even to have a little consumer camcorder on the side, God forbid your camera stops working, which is worst case scenario, right? All of a sudden you're in the middle of a wedding and you're in front of the bride and groom and your camera's not working. Nightmare. Has it happened to you guys? Has that ever happened? Thank God, right? I've heard some horror stories. I've had some shooters come back to me almost in tears because things like that have happened. So you always want to make sure that the equipment that you get is the equipment that's the most ideal for you, that's going to make your job easier, that's going to make going through your day easier, and that's going to be reliable. You want to make sure that your equipment is constantly reliable and you have a plan B. Always. So going a little bit back to environmental tone, you want to set a certain tone. These people chose a venue for a very specific reason. They loved that. People love New York City. They love the garden that they got married in. They're destination weddings. There are a lot of different types of weddings out there and a lot of different types of venues. And you just want to make sure that when a couple has spent God knows how much money on a specific venue, they spent that money on that venue for a very specific reason. They love that venue. They want to see that venue. So you want to make sure to capture it, and not only capture it, but to make it look like the ideal, most beautiful place that they could have gotten married at. So finding your style. I mentioned this a little bit earlier about finding your style. I'm very aware of what my style is. I've been shooting for 7 years. I have a very specific style, and I like that style. That's the style I appreciate shooting. That's what people come to me specifically for. I don't do documentary style weddings. I have such a respect for people who do the kind of documentary weddings that you actually have sound bites and you have interviews and you interject those and you create a story out of that. I have complete respect for that, especially since that's not what I do. I look at it and I go, wow, I didn't didn't even think that you could do something like that. There's so many different ways you can go about it. And if you don't have a set style now, I would definitely recommend just looking at the different types of wedding videography and seeing what interests you the most, seeing what you like to look at the most. That's going to be the content that you're going to be most interested in creating. So just to go a little bit over the types of wedding videography that there are, if you refer to the handouts that everybody handed out, there are a lot of different types of ways of going about shooting weddings. So what I kind of refer to mine as is cinematic. I think of it as a visual experience. That's why I create montages. That's why I put it to music, because to me, I'm shooting it almost like a photographer and I'm creating a story, but I'm not using sound to do that. I'm not using other means of storytelling to do that. I'm using the pure visual and the music to set the tone and the pacing of my videos. So I consider that more of a cinematic view. The video journalistic style, which what I was talking about, I have so much respect for. This is documentary style filmmaking at its best, using sound bits, using interviews throughout the day with the family. So if you're shooting the mother and she's talking about how proud she is of her daughter getting married and things like that, you can literally use that voiceover as the bride's getting ready to just build that tension, to create that story, because that's what people are most interested in. There's a climax to all stories, and you want to just continuously build it, and then you want the ceremony to be a moment, you want that to be a climax, you want the dancing sequence to be a climax. There are certain points throughout the day that you want to highlight. So if you looked at the handout, there's the storytelling, there's the short form wedding, traditional, and honestly, you could intermix all of these together. That's the most interesting wedding video to me, is something that looks cinematic, it looks like it's from a movie, it has sound bites in it, it has all these different elements. Short form weddings, I was just at a LEVA meeting recently where Joe Palma, the president, was showing us how he edits his weddings. And I actually was really impressed by the way that he had a formula. He knows exactly how he wants to lay out his wedding. He knows exactly what is going to come next in the section. It might vary here and there based on the wedding, because every wedding, as we know, is different depending on what kind of wedding it is and what's going on. But he has a formula in which he does that, and he uses sound bites to do it. And he incorporates a lot of these things. The short form wedding for him, he likes to take a long speech, and as he showed us, he literally showed us this like 10-minute long where she just go, we've been there, right? It just keeps going and going, and you're like, oh my God, is the SD card gonna run out? Like, okay, and it's just going and going. You can take something like that and you can make her sound amazing. You can take little bits of what it is that she's talking about, like, and highlight that she loves her sister, highlight a quick little story that's gonna make everybody laugh, and play that as they're walking out of the church, or play that as they're walking into the room for their first dance, and create a real moment from that. So I would suggest you guys go online, look at other wedding videographers, look at the styles that they have, look at these different definitions of these different kinds of wedding videography, and see where exactly you fall, or where it is that your interests fall, and kind of learn from those videos and see what they're doing, and adapt those techniques in shooting and in editing and incorporating that into the way that you actually do your process. So my style, I talked about what I tend to do, and what I tend to do is montages. I tend to do that cinematic thing, as I keep emphasizing, but I kind of think of certain words when I think about what it is that I'm trying to capture. I want it to be romantic. I want it to be warm. That's why I like shooting during magic hour. I like having those warm hues, and I like the kind of tone that it gives the whole footage and the tone that it actually gives the video itself. I like bittersweet kind of music, because I feel like it can't be cheesy if the music itself is making you feel a little bit happy and yet a little bit sad. You don't know. Like for me, that works because I feel like I like showing people smiling and laughing and having a good time, and playing very subtle music in the background so that the footage is really what's moving the story, and that's what you're focused on, instead of maybe a catchy song that you're singing along to and you're not actually paying attention to the footage in front of you. So I like it to be whimsical, I like it to be dreamlike, I like it to be romantic, and I just have a certain kind of vision in my head when I'm shooting a wedding of what I'm going for. I want flair, I love using the sun, I love using natural light. I use that to emphasize my style. I go into it knowing exactly what it is that I want, because I've been doing it for so long. If you're still developing your style, as I said, go look at different things, see what appeals to you, and practice that style. Practice whatever style it is that kind of you're drawn to and interests you the most, because that's what you're going to make the most interesting, because you're in it more. So keeping up with trends. This is huge. Has anybody ever heard of trash dress? Anybody? Okay. Has anybody ever shot a trash dress? Okay. So this is a huge trend with modern brides. They jump in water. They literally throw their dress into a garbage and put it on fire. I don't know. Some people that they like it. They're all about it. They think it's interesting. They think it's fun. It's a trend that I don't know if it's as hyped up now as it was. But keep your finger on the pulse of the different trends that are going on, because you can create a package out of that. You know, you can sell the new latest hip thing that brides are doing. If a bride didn't know that this existed, you could let her know, hey, I also have this cool new package. A lot of brides are into this. They're really excited. It's like fashion to them. It's the new thing to do. It's something exciting. It's something different. It's something fun they can do right after they get married. A lot of modern brides, it used to be the old school thing was to hold on to your dress and things like that. And now modern brides are saying, I'm done with this dress, on to the new dress. Let's do something interesting. So I talked a lot about thinking like a photographer, composing your shots, having the rule of thirds, using light and things like that. Now let's talk a little more about being that storyteller. So we're visual people, we're kind of photographers, but we just shoot a lot of pictures all at once, basically. We also have this knack for being able to create a story from the footage that we develop. If a photo is 1,000 words, then video is 1,000,000. Has anyone ever heard that before? I mean, there's a lot going on with video. So to talk a little bit more about what makes a story. There's a beginning, there's a middle, there's an end, there's tension, there's a build. You want to make sure that there's a build going on and a tension going on and an excitement, because you want to get that person more interested in watching the rest of your video, in watching the rest of the day and how it unfolds. You almost want to make it a mystery, even to the people who were there, because they don't see what you see. When you're shooting, you're an observer in a way that they're not. They're constant participants. So when they're watching your video, they're almost seeing their wedding for the very first time through new eyes. And you want to be able to make that an interesting experience for them. You want to create a story for them, and you want to create tension and passion and love and all of that kind of stuff that we go to the movies to see. So I just want to talk a little bit more about creating that through sections. I shoot the wedding with the sections that I have in mind, because I know how I'm going to edit later. I know that the beginning for me is probably going to be the getting ready, but if you don't have a chance to actually shoot the getting ready, if there's something else going on beforehand, you have to create almost a new beginning. It's hard to start at the ceremony. It's hard to have kind of like a climax point or a point of interest be the very beginning. So if you have to start shooting a wedding just at the ceremony and you don't get the getting ready, I would suggest trying to get there a little early, seeing them arrive, creating tension by showing the people sitting in their seats waiting in anticipation, getting a shot of the groom at the end of the aisle as the bride is coming out of the car and coming down the aisle. There are different ways of creating that tension if it doesn't fall within the frame that you're used to. So the beginning, as I said, it's usually the getting ready. For everybody here who has shot a wedding, we all know that it takes the bride a little longer than it takes the groom, just a little bit, you know, like maybe like 3 more hours or so. So you have a lot more time to capture her. You have like 3 hours of her doing her hair and then doing her makeup and then getting final touches and putting her shoes on and her dress and her jewels and all that kind of stuff. For the groom, I'm usually a one-man band, and I can pretty much go down there, shoot him for about 5-10 minutes, know exactly what I need to interject into the rest of the footage, and know that I have plenty of time to capture as much as I need of the bride later. But you want to make sure to film it in a certain kind of way. This is my favorite thing to shoot, because I feel like I have the most time to shoot. I feel I have the most time to be creative, to create that tension, to create that build, to get people excited about this. The way I go about doing that within my style is to shoot the bride in this mysterious, romantic kind of way. To shoot her from afar, or to kind of only shoot the back of her hair getting ready, or to shoot her so close up getting her eyelashes done or something that you don't quite see her completely yet, because I want to reveal her later. I want there to be this moment of like, oh, there she is and she looks gorgeous. And you want to make sure that you build that tension in a certain kind of way. You can have her be a little out of focus and start to pull into focus and cut to something else. There's so many ways of creating that mystery and creating that tension and that excitement. You want to make sure to get happy moments from her. You want to make sure to see her smiling, see her laughing, to capture those moments. The best thing about being a wedding videographer is that it exercises that muscle for you as a shooter. These things are not going to happen again. You know, that moment where she touches his hand is not going to happen again. Like, besides the vows, besides the very specific things that aren't going to happen again, like the speeches and the things that you just have to get, you also have just tender moments that if you don't get it in that moment that it happens, it's lost. And if you direct them or you try to have them do it again, it's not going to be the same feeling, it's not going to be the same thing, and you've interrupted that moment for them. You know, they just had a romantic moment and now you're like, oh, could you do that again? no, oh, yeah. Oh, sorry about that. Could you do that again? You really want to make sure to be that fly on the wall. You want to make sure to have those moments unfold, but also know your equipment well enough, be a veteran enough shooter to capture those moments right when they happen in an unobtrusive way, and in a way that you can actually get these moments throughout the day and create a really tender moment and a tender video for the couple. I like to study my client. When you meet your client, one of the first things that I'm doing when I'm meeting them is establishing my relationship with them. I'm establishing that I'm going to be that fly on the wall, that I'm not going to interrupt their moment. But I'm also looking at them as a visual artist. I'm looking at the light. I'm like, if I'm walking down the street with them, I'm actually looking at the top light, the light to the side. When you do film, you do screen tests. You have an actress stand here, and you take like a china ball, and you go over here, you go up, you go down, you go in front of her, you go up, you go down, and you do this all the way around, and you see what her best light is, you see what her best angle is, you see what she looks best in. And as a visual artist, as you're looking at your client, you can do that as well. You can see if she has a round face and needs to be shot at a certain angle. You can see if certain light really makes her look like a completely different person that she would never want to see on video. You can note that stuff, and you can note it as you're shooting as well, and it's a good thing to do that, because then you can really learn throughout the day how to shoot your bride. I like to refer to the She's All That moment. Has anybody seen She's All That? I love that movie. I'm a girl, I'm sorry. She has that moment where she turns from geek to chic, right? Where she comes down the stairs and jaws drop and it's slow motion and you have that moment. I like to create that in my getting ready. I like to have a beginning, middle, and end throughout the whole edit. So you have the getting ready, you have the ceremony, you have all the things that happen and unfold, and there's this arc of a story. But within each section, I want to make sure to have an arc and to have a story as well. So for the getting ready section specifically, for the beginning of this whole video, that section itself is going to have its own story as well. That section is going to have her unveiling, this mysterious creature getting ready, and then her unveiling, and then seeing him and the excitement that he has. And then it usually ends towards the ceremony where they're seeing each other, or sometimes they have a first look where they're actually seeing each other for the first time before the ceremony. And that can be the climax of that point in that video. And of course, the groom takes about 5 minutes to shoot, but when you are taking those 5 minutes, make sure to use them wisely. I mean, it takes me 5 to 10 minutes because literally I've done this so long that I know the exact shots that I want. You know, you have like a formula, you have a style, and you just know the second you walk into the room, he's gonna put that tie on, he's gonna put his coat on, he's gonna put his shoes on, he's gonna maybe look in the mirror and fix his hair or something, but it's not gonna be the long actual getting ready that you're gonna have with the bride. You're gonna have these quick shots, but you're also gonna have happy shots of him and excitement, and you wanna build on that. So as we go towards the ceremony, as we go towards the reception, we're working towards the middle of it, the middle of our story. And this is the main event, the ceremony, so that's definitely a climax. When we come to the term short version, when we call it a short-term wedding or a short version wedding, you want to condense it down sometimes. Sometimes that depends on your client. There are clients that want everything. There are a lot of Indian weddings that I've done where it's like they wanted 2 hours, they wanted the whole ceremony, the whole thing that happened beforehand, the whole thing that happened after. And sometimes you have to appease your clients that way, but it's not always the best video at the end of the day. If that's what your client wants, then absolutely you want to appease them and you want to give them the product that they want. And then maybe you would shorten it down for yourself to present to another client for them to see, because that's going to be more interesting for them. For the ceremony, I tend to stay in the middle of the aisle as I'm shooting. So if this was the ceremony, I'd be all the way in the back in the middle because I'm usually the only shooter, in which case I can have a nice wide shot where I'm capturing everything and I can zoom in real quick. Being the only shooter, I have to be my own second shooter as well. So I've literally trained myself to zoom in really quickly, literally when the priest is breathing or something like that, because you don't want to have problems with audio later. You want to make sure that whatever equipment you have already, or any equipment that you're planning on using, that you become very skilled with them. As a visual artist, you're like a painter. You need to know your brushes. You need to know how to use them. You need to know how to apply them, and you need to be able to use them in the moment in order to capture that moment that you could miss. So for the ceremony, you want to make sure to capture the vows, clearly. I record throughout the entire ceremony. I usually give the whole ceremony to the couple, and they probably watch it once, if that, right? But I do shorten it down for them as well, depending on what package that they want. You want to make sure you have the highlights. You want to make sure you have the vows, the rings exchanging, the kissing, all of that stuff. That's a climax. That's a peak. That's an excitement, you know. So we had this beginning section. We had this getting ready section. They're so excited. They're about to join and become a family. And the ceremony is a pinnacle. And this is the arc that we're creating. This is the story that we're creating. This is the mood and the movie that we're creating for this family. So there are highlight, there are key moments. This is really the first peak, and there are other peaks, like the first dance and certain moments throughout the actual event itself, which may vary depending on the wedding. The cocktail hour to me is like this great time, because usually it's during that magic hour. Usually you're getting this great footage of the couple outside, maybe with like great light and stuff like that, but also I feel it gives you an opportunity to capture the environment, to capture the venue, to capture interesting detail shots and artistic shots, like glasses and different details that they have in their wedding. It's very important to capture those details. And when you're shooting the cocktail hour, I feel like it's the perfect time, because there's a whole hour set aside for people to just relax. And you can take your time to slowly accumulate filler footage and things that you can put throughout your video to make it a more visually interesting video and to make the content more interesting, because this is people laughing. Like, yes, they're eating. Maybe you don't want to put that you know, Uncle Bob eating that donut and it's falling on. That might not be the shot that you want to choose. It depends on the couple. Sometimes couples like a funny video. But in my videos, I like to show people laughing. I like to show people engaging each other. And I feel the cocktail hour, people are having their first drinks of the day. People are finally like, whew, the ceremony's over, hats are off. You want to capture that. You want to capture the kinds of moments that you can get from other family members. It's also important when you meet with your clients, the first meeting is key. There are certain things you want to emphasize to them. You want to emphasize your style, make sure that that's the style that they want. You want to make sure that you're studying their face and that you're studying angles and light on them so that you can see how you want to shoot them later. But you also want to make sure that you know which family members are important. Ask them, you know, you're not going to know Cousin Tiffany was there and you didn't capture her, and the bride is devastated. Her Cousin Tiffany flew all the way from Paris and you don't have one shot of her in the whole thing, and you don't even know what Cousin Tiffany looks like. So you want to make sure to establish that with your client. Are there important people that I should make sure to capture? And the cocktail hour is the middle of the day is a great time to get that. And the dancing section as well. There are lower points in the wedding where it's a little chiller, where you can actually come inside and find the people who are important to the bride and make sure to get them and make sure to use them within the actual edit. So the ending, the reception. The first dance, essential. That's another pinnacle that we're talking about when we're talking about the arc and we're talking about conflict and excitement and pinnacles and moments that you really want to capture that are really going to make the bride and groom ecstatic. It's definitely going to be the first dance, the parents' dance, the speeches, as I was talking about. What's great about speeches is you can take a 10-minute long speech and you can make it more interesting. You can condense it down and put B-roll over that. Or if you have a second shooter and you can have one shooter on the bride and groom getting reactions and another shooter on the actual person making the speech, then you have stuff to interject with, and you can shorten down a speech that maybe someone wouldn't want to necessarily sit through for another 10 minutes. You can make that 10-minute speech that's a little long-winded and a little bit much and is putting everybody to sleep, and make that into a 2-minute speech that they'll watch over and over again because it's hilarious. And as an editor, you can do that and you can fine-tune it. The dancing section, to me, is like the true celebration. That's like an ending note. Everyone's excited, everyone's dancing, hopefully. Sometimes I've had weddings. Has anyone had a wedding where literally the same 5 people were dancing? And you just have them like on a loop for like 2 or 3 minutes, and you just have to explain to the bride and groom, like, I'm sorry about that, but you know, only Auntie Tiffany and Uncle Kenny were dancing. They were the only ones, and you have a whole 3 minutes of them dancing. Enjoy. But you can usually work those things out. But the dancing section is really like another climax. That's the ending. You want to make sure that that's something exciting, visually exciting for them to see. So you're shooting things in a visually artistic way. You're making sure to get those people that are really important, but you're also trying to end on a high note. So I'm just going to show you a highlight. So what I had showed you previously was basically a reel of several different weddings that I have. This is actually a highlight for one specific couple, so it's a preview that I give. There's a full wedding, and then this would be a highlight. This is actually on the event space page for my class. So some of you may have seen this, and I actually planned it that way because I would like, for what it is that I just talked about story and beginning, middle, and end, and building tension, and all these different visual things that I've been talking about. I want you to think of what you thought of when you first saw it and watch it with the intention that I have now, with the actual technique that I developed and the actual emphasis that I've put on everything, so that you can actually see what's being utilized and why. So I'm going to play this really quickly. Thank you. I'm going to go a little more into the role of the cinematographer. Since I've done a lot of film and I've done a program in film and I've been on film sets, I think of things as a storyteller, as a cinematographer, and I have a very specific layout in my head of how I want to capture this wedding and how I want to capture these moments. You want to make sure, as the cinematographer, that you're telling the story through the visuals, that you're telling the beginning, middle, and end, that you're building this tension, that you're creating transitions, and you're doing this with the visuals that you create and with what you're doing with that camera, the pans, the tilts, glide cam, different things that you can do, steady cam, different facets that you can use. There are sliders. There's so much you can use to actually make a wedding look like a full-blown movie, really. I mean, I'm sure many of you guys have looked up a lot of different weddings. I'm sure you've gone online and seen different styles and stuff like that. There are some insane weddings out there. They're beautifully shot. Some of them are more beautiful than some commercials that I find on TV. There is just so much that you can do with this art form, and you can even just develop your skills as a shooter, as an editor, and move on from this. And this is why wedding videography is such a great business to be in, because it can be that thing that you freelance and do every once in a while as a shooter or an editor, or it could be your full-blown business. And that can fluctuate with time, because you can go back and forth. You could freelance for yourself and do something else, or have your own studio. And that's a pretty flexible, great thing to have in your back pocket. To create the visual shots that I'm talking about, you need close-ups, you need medium shots, you need wide shots, you need establishing shots, you need the pans and tilts. You need as many options as you can so that when you're in that editor chair, you know that you have a cutaway and that you have this great moving shot. If you're editing and you find yourself, oh, there's another still medium shot, there's another still medium shot, and it's just a series of that, you're losing your audience, your video is less dynamic, you're not gonna capture them the way that you wanna capture them if you have close-ups and medium shots and wide shots. And this is really when my psychology comes in. When I'm creating a visual experience, I'm thinking about the audience, I'm thinking about how they visually experience the world. So handhelds, how I was talking about having my video camera and most of my shots are handheld. With a video camera, that's fine because it has a little bit of heftiness to it, you know? And so even though there's maybe a little bit of up and down, that's exactly how we experience the world. As we're walking around, our heads are bobbing. That's how we experience the world. It doesn't feel strange to us. But with the 5D, it's shaky, it vibrates. That's not how we experience the world. We're immediately uncomfortable and we don't know why. But you know why. And as you're shooting, you apply those tactics and you apply what it is that you know about the visual experience and the way we visually experience the world to the way you're gonna show your video and the way you're gonna have them experience this day again. With close-ups, another thing that comes psychology, you just think about intimacy. You know, nobody sees that bride close up like that except that groom. You know, that's his wife to be. That's an intimate moment. We don't experience people like this. You know, we're not like right in front of people. You know, we're not like, hey, how you doing? Well, some people are. You know, the close talker from Seinfeld? Does everyone remember that episode? Yeah, I do a lot of trade shows. I get it. There are those people who want to eat pretzels and, you know, and it's like, oh, okay. But usually we experience people from afar. We experience medium shots or from far away. By incorporating close-ups and getting really great at capturing close-ups, and if you have a wide shot of something, try to get a close-up of that very same thing. Try to learn how to, when you want to zoom in for when they're holding hands or when they're grabbing each other's hands, because you can cut from a medium shot where they're reaching for each other and immediately cut to a close-up shot where they're grabbing each other's hands. And that's going to be a lot more dynamic, a lot more romantic, and it's going to make your audience really experience that moment more so than if you just had that wide shot and they're holding each other's hands. You've still captured that moment, but now you've really added an element of interest and intrigue to that. So just as an example, also points of view shots. So like if he's looking at her, showing her right after that, you want to show what other people are seeing as well. That makes it a lot more interesting shots that way. So this is just a little tidbit on close-ups. These are just quick examples of it. I like to interject, I'm obsessed with close-ups. I'm a close-up addict, I will admit it. My name is Mena, I'm a close-up addict. I once came to my editing chair and like looked at all my footage, and I think it was this wedding actually. There's a lot of close-ups in this wedding. And I literally had to go through and try to find medium shots. I got like too obsessed with the close-up because it's such an interesting way to visually experience the world to me that I found myself just like, getting way too many of them and finding I didn't have a break, and you don't want that. You want to make sure to have a variation on all of your shots so that you can interlace all of that together in a way that makes sense, in a way that's interesting, because you don't want to just see the same size shots over and over and over again. You want them to work together in a way that develops the story, just like you want your story to unfold. So same thing with medium shots and everything like that. These are more examples of some close-ups. With medium shots, you just don't want to shoot everything in the same size. If you shoot everything in the same size, or imagine you shot the entire wedding wide. Everything's wide, you're on a tripod the whole time, there are no pans, there are no tilts, there's no pull focus, there's nothing interesting with light. No one's going to want to watch that. No one's going to want to watch the same shot repeated over and over and over again. You want to make it dynamic, you want to make it flow. So just some more examples of medium shots. I also make sure to use certain lights and effects and things like that to make everything else interesting. Some more examples of wide shots. Wide shots are great because you can establish where you are. You can be visually interesting in your composition. And it's, again, emphasizing the venue, emphasizing where they are, emphasizing the place where they're getting married and what's happening. You can usually incorporate a lot of people in a big shot, so you can really show the party scene. You can really show, there are reasons we use specific shots, and that's something that's really important. You want to go through your day and know, what have I got? What have I shot? What do I need more of? Once I saw that I was shooting way too many close-ups on that wedding, I immediately started shooting as many wides as I could so that I could end up interjecting those wides into what I already had. So these are just more examples of some wide shots. And it's great too because you can really kind of emphasize where the couple is, where they're going. And this is some establishing shots. So you also want to emphasize, I'm in New York City right now. I'm near the Brooklyn Bridge. I believe I was at Bubby's. And I was shooting a wedding, then I was at a vineyard. You want to establish the location and the venue, and it also makes for a great beginning. You want to take time to capture the venue in a certain kind of aesthetic in order to emphasize the best assets of that venue. And also, it's a great way to start a video. You know, it's like, this is where we are. All movies have that establishing shot where usually it's on a helicopter going over a bridge, but maybe my next wedding. But usually we're going to have to do something else to make something interesting and inviting, and the beginning. You want people to be excited. What's next? What's happening? It adds another layer of mystery. It's like, I know where I am, but I don't know exactly what's about to happen. So these are just some examples of different places that I've shot. These are some grab screens from some of the weddings in different locations, and you just kind of go out of your way to make it as romantic looking and as interesting as you possibly can. Another way to make your footage more dynamic and to evoke a mood is camera moves. So you want to make sure to have pan tilts, you know, sweeping shots. I've seen some wedding videos that have like a lot of like those sweeping shots that just kind of like show all the details real quick, and it seems like every shot is a sweeping shot, sweeping shot. Again, you don't want a lot of the same. Variation is what's going to make your video most interesting. So if you have glide cam shots or steady cam shots, and then you have pan and tilts and you have rack focuses, and you're interjecting those together, that's going to be the most dynamic. That's what's going to give your video product value. That's what's going to give it production value. It's going to seem like you put a lot into that video. So this is just a quick pull focus. So I'm on a flower and the bride's getting ready. And this is another example of how I would make her seem mysterious. I'm almost unveiling her, but not quite. You're seeing her for the first time, but you're not. And that adds mystery, that adds tension, that adds the story. So this is just a little example of some of my pan and tilts. It makes things just more interesting. You can unveil the bride in a certain way. You can reveal certain things. As you shoot more and more, you're going to get better at creating content for a specific reason, for a specific emotion. Notice how I tilted down, but I was also pulling focus as I did that to create an interesting effect with the lights. That's also something you can use within a transition. So that was the same wedding. So I had a pull focus and then a tilt down, and then I pan across the room, and I was able to connect those together within an edit to make it more interesting. And all I'm doing is showing the room. All I'm doing is showing the people that were there and stuff like that, but you can make that more interesting with the way that you actually shoot it. So B-roll, I mentioned this a little bit earlier. You want filler footage. You want to make sure that you have enough to actually cut away to, especially if you're the only shooter. You want to make sure that you have enough B-roll that if you had to adjust at a certain moment, or if you had to do something within a real-time moment that you were trying to capture, maybe you can cut to a cutaway of something that applies, or something that can kind of cover up. It's almost like Photoshop. When you're editing, you know, we've all been there, we've shot a lot of videos, things happen, people step in front of your camera, you know, you're all of a sudden, like, you tripped a little bit and it's shaky there and you don't want to show that. Being able to have B-roll really allows you for more flexibility in the editing room. If you were to have a second shooter, this is primarily what they would be focused on. But when you're the main shooter, you have to make sure to be the first shooter and the second shooter at the same time. So it's very important to get B-roll. So for cutaways, essential for editing, it really is an essential element to creating your video in order to really create a dynamic one. So a little bit about first shooter and second shooter. As I mentioned, I typically shoot alone, so I am my second shooter. But a first shooter is primarily focused on everything that's happening in the moment. The vows, what's going on with the couple. That person tends to be with the bride, capturing them, and then the person who's doing B-roll tends to also go to the groom and focus on the groom. So the first shooter is the primary shooter. They're the person who's focused on capturing the wedding as if they didn't have a second shooter. So the essential moments, the speeches, the different things like that. And then as the speeches are going on, the second shooter can capture the reaction shots, they can capture B-roll, they can get other elements that will add more to your presentation later, that will add more to the actual edit itself for the content. So 2-camera shoot, something that's really important about having a 2-camera shoot. You want to make sure that if you do have a 2-camera shoot, they're either the same camera or at the very least can have the same settings. Because you will have problems in editing. Your timeline won't be the same frame rate, or the resolution is different, and you're going to have issues within that. So you want to make sure that when you are capturing a wedding with a second shooter, that they have the same camera you have, or at the very least you're positive and you've tested that you can set them to the same settings so that when you go into the editing room, there are no surprises, there are no glitches, you don't have to downgrade perfectly good footage from one camera to match another camera. So if you do that beforehand, you're equipped to go and actually shoot and not have any issues later with editing. And you want to communicate with each other too. When you have a second shooter, what's great about having somebody that you shoot with all the time, it becomes like baseball. You're like this, you're going like that, you're going like that, and they know exactly what you're saying. You're saying backlight here, you're saying go shoot that, you're saying, oh, look what's happening over there. You're communicating throughout the day, almost like without verbal communication, because you know that person. That's the ideal situation. Sometimes you hire a student and they're doing it for free and they've never shot anything before, and it's a lot of fun, but you have to still communicate with them in a certain way. You want to make sure that you're in constant communication with them. This is also very essential for when you're working with a photographer, because if you're meeting a photographer for the very first time and you're having issues because they're stepping into your shot and stuff like that, you kind of want to have a conversation before that even happens. You don't want to have that conflict. You want to meet them beforehand and say, hey, I'll stay out of your shot if you stay out of my shot. Let's work together and really make this wedding work. So these are some frequently asked questions. Are there any other questions? So 1 shooter versus 2. As I was saying, when I shoot, I tend to shoot as if I have a second shooter. So literally the majority of the stuff that I showed you, I shot completely by myself. Even if there's like a wide shot and all of a sudden there's a close-up, or if there's another angle, that's literally me running around pretending to be another person trying to get another shot. And that's what makes it truly dynamic. It's a lot easier to have 2 shooters. It's great to have 2 shooters. If you can find someone to actually do that, then that's very helpful and it'll help out your edit. Yes?
When you're shooting, when you video, do you ever take still shots from the video?
Oh, the question was that while I'm shooting video, do I ever take still shots? My camera actually isn't capable of doing that. There are cameras that are, so I have not, but that's definitely a possibility. There are cameras that actually can shoot video and also take snapshots. So if you wanted to maybe sell some snapshots on the side, or have a package where you're like, oh, I can also take some photos throughout the day as well if you'd like that, that could be an add-on if you wanted it to be, if you wanted to do both. So say you had the 5D even, you could do some video footage and then maybe take a couple snapshots here and there. Yes?
But you can take freeze frames from the editing.
Right, exactly. The comment was that you can take still frames or freeze frames from the editing. You could do that as well, yes. But specifically, if you're taking snapshots at the wedding, you need a camera that could do both. But you could take still images as well from the actual edit. Are there any other questions? Okay, so how long of a day? That's something I get asked a lot, like how long do I commit myself for the day? I usually commit myself for about 8 to 9 hours, depending, because I like capturing that getting ready. I really think if you can influence your bride to do the getting ready portion, I would highly, highly recommend that, because it just adds that beginning element to your video. You know, when you start at the ceremony, it's a little harder to build that excitement and to build that tension up into the ceremony if the ceremony is the first thing that you're actually seeing. So I shoot for about 8 to 9 hours. Has anybody shot anything longer than that? Like a crazy 12-hour day or something?
How about Greek weddings?
Oh, Greek wedding. Oh yeah, I shot a Greek wedding once. That was like a 12-hour day. Yeah, that was a lot of fun. Yeah, and Indian weddings too sometimes go on for a while. And sometimes you even can book a whole weekend. Sometimes there are destination weddings and they have like that party like before the actual ceremony, and they have like engagement parties and things like that. So they might actually, you know, extend you out. There are different packages that you can do, and you can actually, instead of like how long of a day, it could end up being like how many days. And then you have a whole weekend that you're shooting continuously. So I talked about camera and workflow as well. You want to make sure to have the same camera, same settings. You want to make sure to actually keep that consistent. So it just makes your life so much easier later. Like I said, the more you edit, the more you understand the pains of editing and how horrible things can go and how quickly that can happen. And the second you realize that, you immediately become a better video shooter, because you know what it is that you need, you know where you want to go from here, and you know what's going to be essential. So editing is really when the story just really comes together. The way I was talking about shooting, you're shooting with editing in mind, and you're constantly going about the day knowing that at the end of this all, it's going to have to come into an edit, whether you're doing the editing, whether a studio's doing the editing, whether you have an assistant editing for you. At the end of the day, it's going to come together in a certain kind of way, and you want to make sure that you have the shots that you need in order to do that. But you can also shoot with intention. I pull focus sometimes, I pull things out of focus, I use light flare. I literally use things that I know I'm gonna be able to interject later. I love it when people pass by my camera. You know, people go, oh, I'm sorry, or you don't want them to pass by your camera. It's like, I love when people pass by my camera. That just gave me a cut. You know, so it all blacked out and then bam, I cut to something else, and it creates this interesting hard cut that you can use within your edit to really kind of make it more dynamic and interesting to watch. So just a little bit more about that. As I'm saying, shooting with editing in mind. As you're shooting, you are mentally editing the film together. You're asking yourself, how will this come together? Where is my beginning, my middle, my end? How can I use my camera in order to create transitions? You become a skilled shooter by understanding the process of editing. I can't emphasize that enough. I have to admit, I'm not the biggest fan of editing. I'm good at editing. I got really good, I got really quick, I did all the things I needed to do. I love being behind the camera. That's the thing that changed my life. I was a psychology major, I did this random film class. I thought I'd go and direct and have the psychological human condition be on film, you know? And then I got behind the camera and I was moved. I always wanted to be able to draw and I never could, you know? And the person who created photography is somebody who couldn't draw. That's a fact. The person who created photography couldn't draw, but they saw something. They were still a visual person. They were still an artist. They were still a visual artist. And getting behind the camera for me was the moment that I had that changed my life. And so I love being behind the camera. Editing is like a necessary evil to me. Editing is where it all comes together, and shooting a wedding is a lot like shooting a documentary because you have a lot of random footage that you can put together in a certain kind of way. I have a formula that I go by. I have my beginning, my middle, my end. I don't really veer away from that much. I'm doing a little bit more now where I'm getting a little bit more dynamic and exciting. You can have like flashbacks, you can have things not be in chronological order. All those kind of things can add interest to your edit. You can really develop something that's going to be interesting. So when you're shooting, you want to have that in mind. You want to make sure that you have not only just the basics of what you need. Okay, bam, I got the vows. Okay, I definitely got the first dance. I definitely got all the speeches. But you want to make sure you have something more than that. You want to make sure you have your checklist. And I would even suggest making a checklist. If you guys are just starting shooting weddings, it's hard. It's really, really hard. I would literally sit down with the client, talk about the day, the layout of the day, or the wedding planner, whoever it is that's organizing the actual events themselves, and figure out when things are happening. Because the more prepared you are, if you don't feel like you're at the stage that you want to be as a shooter, the more prepared you are, the better the outcome. The better you're going to be able to capture the moments when they're happening. You're going to know that the speech is coming up, different things like that. And as you're doing that, as you have your checklist and you're checking off all the fundamentals that you absolutely need and are essential, that's when you get to play. That's when you get to be like, okay, what's going to be interesting? What's going to be fun? What can I add to this to actually now make this interesting and dynamic? I have what I need. I have fulfilled my job in capturing these moments. Now, what can I grab that will be extra, that will make this video more than the basics? So a lot of that, when you're editing, has to do with music choice. And I get a lot of questions about music. As you can see, the kind of music choice that I usually go with is this bittersweet kind of, I'm sad yet happy, I feel romantic. I don't really know how to feel, it just feels peaceful. That's my goal, is to have some kind of peaceful melody playing under my visuals, because I want my visuals to speak for themselves and to unfold and create this story. And the music helps propel that. But I don't want the music to dominate. That's where my style is emphasized. I want a certain kind of music because I don't want you to not see my visuals. I don't want you to be singing along to the song and almost like not even see anything, because music is so essential. It's 70%, I would even say 90% of the video and the feel. You know, it's immediate. You hear something and you're immediately in that mood. So if you have a peppy song or if you have a dance song and all of a sudden there's all these slow shots, that's not going to make any sense, and it's not going to move the actual footage the way you want it to be moved. So like I say, cheesy songs. Some songs are cheesy. in the actual video, but not necessarily in real life. Like the songs that they play at the wedding. Clearly they like that music, clearly it's there, and maybe it's okay to use that for the dance section, but I wouldn't necessarily use that for the highlight, because these are songs that people like to drink and dance to. They're not necessarily songs that they want their romantic wedding video to. So you really want to be careful when you're choosing music. So I'm going to show you 2 different highlights. And these, again, are the previews to my weddings. They have completely different music, and I'm just going to show you them as an example of how music can really change the tone of the video. Okay, so that's one feeling, right? That's one kind of melancholy, almost bittersweet, yet romantic kind of feel, and that's the feel that I typically go for. I actually would like to go back in this video and also emphasize subtlety. I just don't know if anybody noticed a couple of the things that I did within this edit. Let me see if it'll let me do this. So, by the way, always have the kids. Always have kids. Make sure. They love seeing kids, and not only that, but kids are so uninhibited. You know, they have no self-awareness in regards to the camera. They just are. You know, they're themselves. It's great. Not only do people love seeing children, but they're almost the most candid part of the wedding. They're just themselves, and that's it. So I just wanted to emphasize a little something. I don't know if you guys saw this in one of the shots. All right, does anyone see the baby? Never underestimate subtlety. Okay, so little things like that, you might not notice it. You might not notice it the first time, but they're gonna rewatch that. They're gonna see it the second or the third or the fourth, or one of their family members is gonna catch it, and they're gonna notice that you took care and you took time to really apply a certain song, to really edit something in a certain way, to really emphasize what was going on. And even if you don't notice that, you feel that moment. Yes?
Was that the actual length of the movie, or was that the actual length of what you provided to the client?
Oh, this is just the highlight. It's just the preview. Yeah, so it's just the preview. Yeah. And I'm going to show you another preview right after this one that just has different music to kind of emphasize the different feel. But I just want to emphasize that these little subtle things that you do as you become a better editor, even though people don't notice it, they do. They unconsciously notice it. They're going to feel it. That's even more important because that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to provoke an emotion. You're trying to tell the story of the day and get a certain reaction out of your audience. And little things like that, like a lyric, like emulating something that's actually happening in the video very subtly, a little baby crawling across the aisle in the middle of the ceremony, I couldn't not put that in. That's great. You know, even if you don't notice it, you do. There's part of you that really does. Okay, so this is the other highlight that has a different kind of feel because based on the music. Okay, so very different feel, right? The reason I chose that song for that bride was because she was so peppy. Like the whole day, like never had a drama moment, never had an issue, was just happy and like enjoyed it and like really was like the ideal bride, you know, just somebody that you really rooted for throughout the day. You were like, yeah, you go girl, like all day, you know? And she was just so happy and always smiling, and I just didn't feel like what I tended to do, which was a certain subtler, lower key kind of music, I felt it didn't apply to her necessarily. And that's feeling out your client. You know, you need to make sure that you're connected enough with your client, you understand your client enough to know and understand their likes and dislikes, enough to understand who they are and what they might be about and what they would like. So music. There are issues when it comes to copywritten music and non-copywritten music and royalty-free and all these things. I'm sure you guys either have had problems or concerns about this. A lot of people use regular music and they see it as, you know, local distribution and it's not that big of a deal. If you're doing things like that, I would really emphasize to try to use non-copywritten music so that you can have the rights to everything that's online. So your footage, you created that content from nuts to bolts, and the music that you're using, you own. These are a couple of websites, stockmusic.com. Vimeo actually has a music store now, so if you guys are uploading like any videos to Vimeo and stuff like that, they actually have a music store where there are some free songs and there are some songs you can actually purchase to use. freestockmusic.com, and there's so many more. These are just a couple of them that I know that friends have used that they really like, and a couple that I've used. So you really want to do the research. You know, that's why I'm creating a library for myself and things like that. And the thing is, you can reuse music. You don't always have to have like a different song for a different couple. You're going to run out of music anyway. You know, to them, it's still going to be a new song. To the couple that's now getting their video, even though you've used that song several times, it's still new to them. You know, you might want to do a different song for the highlight if that's something you're going to put on your website and you want variation on those. But if a client's getting like their getting ready section is to the same song that the previous couple you just did, they're not going to know that, and it's still going to be special to them. And sometimes it's actually useful to you as an editor to use those same songs because you get accustomed to when the beats come, to when a certain shift in the music comes, and then you really know when you're going to make a change or when you're going to, you know, cut on the beat or something like that because you know the song so well. It actually becomes a quicker process. Okay, so creating a story through the edit. I like to repeat myself a lot. Beginning, middle, and end. It's so important that I have to say it as many times as I can. You want there to be an arc. You want there to be a story. You want there to be tension. You want there to be excitement. And thinking of it in terms like this as you're shooting, you want to make sure to create the beginning. You want to make her mysterious. You want to reveal her at some point. You want to create that tension, and then you have the ceremony and you have the cocktail hour and people are happy and you have this pinnacle, and then you go into the reception, you have the dance, you have other pinnacles, you have other things going on. And you just want to make sure to not only have that arc throughout the whole full wedding. So as I was saying, I have different sections throughout. So the getting ready section, the ceremony section, the cocktails, the reception, which has the speeches and all this other stuff. I'm trying to make it have this arc of a story. There's a beginning and there's this climax of the ceremony and people are excited and dancing, and then they leave off and you kind of drift into the night, you know? You want this beginning, middle, and end. But you also want that within the sections themselves. So the way I was talking about the getting ready section, I try to have her be mysterious, and there's this beginning and this reveal, and then there's a pinnacle of him seeing her before the ceremony usually. There's that first seeing that a lot of people are doing, a lot of videographers are capturing, where the groom and bride kind of turn, and then they see each other, and then she's revealed to him and he's revealed to her, and you're capturing their expressions and their reactions to each other and everything. And that's a pinnacle within itself. Within that little section, you just reach a climax in that story. And then, you know, they're usually taking pictures, and then it kind of drifts off. So you want to make sure that the entire full wedding has an arc and has a story and has a beginning and middle and end, but you also want to make sure that the sections themselves, because they're not necessarily watching the whole thing and sitting down and watching this whole beautiful story that you laid out for them. Sometimes they're like, cocktails, randomly dance. And you want to make sure that those sections are as fulfilling to watch as a story to them as watching the whole thing is, because they probably are going to be skipping to chapters and watching the sections themselves. So are there any questions on that? Okay. So this is where my psychology comes in again. So when I started doing film, and I talked a little bit about this before, how I thought I would like write or direct or something like that, because what really interests me was the human condition on film. Like, what really interests me was how film was a medium that really captured the human condition. And that to me was astonishing in a way that no other medium really does. Theater doesn't do it, photography doesn't do it. Video and film, the close-ups, that intimacy that video gives you within a close-up like that, nothing else does that, and it's very, very interesting to me. So everything that I do video-wise, editing-wise, shooting-wise, my psychology goes right into that. The idea of how people work, how people experience the world, how they're going to experience my video. And I also have my psychology background that teaches me how people function. So if you give somebody a list of numbers or a list of names or a list of random states or something like that, and it's like 10 on the list, they're gonna remember the first 2 or 3 and the last 2 or 3. because that's how we work as human beings. We remember the beginning of things and the ends of things. The middle gets a little messed up. We're not really sure about the middle. It's called the recency and latency effect. So when something starts, we're in. We're paying attention, we're aware, we'll remember it, then we kind of drift a little bit. Oh no, it's ending, we're back. Now we're remembering the ending, and now we can really refer to the ending and understand the ending. That's why in an edit, it's so important to start strong and start with a great shot. That's why the establishing shots are so important. You want a beautiful shot of the venue to add mystery. Where are we? Where are we going? And it's also visually beautiful. You want to catch their eye and catch their attention from the very beginning. And then you want to show them interesting things intermixed within that, but you also want to end strong. So you want to keep that in mind when you're editing. I actually, when I'm creating my formula and I'm creating my timeline and stuff like that, I literally organize my clips in a certain way. I'm like, oh, these are the really great establishing shots. I can start off with these. Oh, this would be really great ending shots because they're really visually interesting in this kind of way. And then I can really lay out my edit and know that I already have options of how it is that I'm going to formulate this, how it is that I'm going to go about creating that arc and creating an interesting video for someone to experience. So as I was saying, beginning with establishing shots, it sets a tone of where you are, and it also, I feel, adds like an element of mystery. It's kind of like when you're shooting the bride from afar and then you're revealing her a little bit later. We're kind of revealing where we are, but not necessarily, because we're not seeing people yet, we're not seeing what's going on, we don't really know what time it is, you know, like, we're just seeing the location, and we're seeing a beautiful shot of the location, but it's drawing us in because it's adding mystery. It's showing us a place, but not necessarily what's happening in the story yet. So it's visually interesting, but also as a story element, it makes you want to know more because you're not giving it all up at once. You're not showing them everything that's happening from the very beginning. So as I was talking about with editing, the beginning and getting ready and the she's all that moment, you want to build that tension, you want to build that excitement, and you want to emphasize the details of the wedding. So as you're building this mystery of the bride, so maybe it's a close-up of her ear, putting her earring on, maybe it's a faraway shot where you're pulling focus to her but you don't quite see her, like that clip that I showed. Or maybe you can use details to start building that tension and building that excitement of her getting ready. You're shooting the shoes, you're shooting the rings, you're shooting the different things that are going to come together that they're literally going to put on as they're getting ready to experience that day. And that's exciting, and that can build tension, and that can really kind of make people, and these are also details that they put in there for a reason, just like they chose the venue for a reason. Those rings mean something to them. Is there an engraving inside? Do you think maybe you can get like a really close shot of that and then see if you can capture that? There are little details that they're gonna miss out on through that day. It's stressful getting married. It's a lot of fun. Everyone's having fun, but there's also a lot of stress. There's also a lot of running around, and there's also a lot of details that people miss out on. And that's why you're there. You're there to capture those for them, and you're there to emphasize to them, look, I know that you maybe were running around that day, but I got this for you, and you can see the rings, and you can see the little like earrings that your grandmother gave you, and the blue and the old, and all the elements that come together to make that day special for you, because you may have missed it in the anxiety and the stress of the day. And it's really important to capture those, and then you can use them as an editing tool to create that tension and to create that slowly coming together and then the reveal of the bride. So I'm going to show you a quick sample of my getting ready. So basically what I'm going to show you guys is the samples of the sections that I typically do. So the getting ready and the different things like that, this will be the getting ready. This would be the beginning of one of my stories. Okay, so you can see an arc in that, right? It's a getting ready section and it's the beginning of my overall movie, but there's also an arc within it and there's a story within it. The middle is more the ceremony and the cocktails and things like that. It's really important within the ceremony, as I was saying when you're shooting, to get close-ups, medium shots, all kinds of different shots that you can. I'm typically situated in the ceremony right where I need to be because of the fact that I don't have a second shooter. So I need to make sure that I'm not running around too much because you could be running around and then the rings are happening. So I want to make sure that I'm kind of in the same position and I zoom in when important things are happening. But you want to make sure to have the close-ups, the medium shots, as many variations as you can in order to interject and to make that edit a little more interesting. And also, if you wanted to condense down the ceremony, you want to be able to do that. So when you're at a wide shot, also remember, you can't really see what's going on. So if you ever need to cut back because a mess up happened or something like that, you can always cut back to that wide shot. You can always kind of just make sure the baby isn't going across the aisle again. Because then they're going to be like, hey, I saw that shot. You just want to make sure that you're doing it artfully and you're doing it smart. But you do want to get as much as you can in order to create that edit. So before the bride comes and stuff like that, maybe get some shots of people sitting in their seats. If you can get shots of people looking and stuff like that, if there's something going on that you don't think you're going to use, I usually capture the whole thing because you really do never know. But if you can zoom in real quick and get someone's reaction, or if you can do something for cutaways, because you want to make sure that if you want to condense down the ceremony, you have a means of doing that. You have something you can cut to so that you can cut to the next shot and condense something down, or cut a really long speech out. Like, I don't know if you guys ever went to like a Catholic wedding before, but those are like about an hour long and stuff. And people usually don't want to sit through, you know, the priest's presentation again and all that kind of stuff. So there are things that you can cut out and fine tune it, and you want to make sure to have those shots that you need in order to make that happen. I really love cocktail hour. Well, not because I'm having the cocktails, I'm shooting. But I love when people are enjoying themselves, they're laughing, they're having a good time, you know, and you want to capture those moments. And it's a great time to capture detail shots and stuff like that. And you can really do something artistic with it, even though it might seem boring when it's going on. But this is where the art of the editor comes in. And this is where the art of the shooter comes in. Because you can create a story out of nothing. Like I showed you the leading space and I showed you the groom looking at his bride. And they were in completely different buildings. That's movie magic. That's something that as you become a better editor, as you become a better shooter, you can create these moments and these feelings, you know, and they become real. So I'm going to show you a quick, well, not a highlight, a cocktail hour kind of music video montage that I created, and it's actually one of my favorite cocktail hours. Okay, so cocktail hour, usually not that exciting, right? But I was able to find just beautiful things happening at that time, and the light was just so gorgeous, and I was able to make certain cuts and stuff like that to make it more interesting. Did anybody notice when somebody passed my, you noticed it, right? I'm gonna go back to that real quick. I love it when people cross my frame. I'm just like, yeah, no. Like, they always give you that look of like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. And I'm like, no, do it. It's great to use like Final Cut and Adobe Premiere and use the effects that they have. But as you shoot more and more, the more that you can create yourself within the camera and the harder cuts that you can make. A lot of people, I like using cross dissolves, but to an extent, and I'll talk about that a little bit later as well. There's nothing like cutting to the beat in a hard cut because it really just feels like an actual movie. You know, in a movie you don't usually have cross dissolve to cross dissolve to cross dissolve. They're usually hard cuts with medium shots and close-ups and things like that. And you want to mimic that as much as you possibly can. So the end is usually, you know, the ceremony, the speeches, the dancing, all that kind of stuff. Essentials are the first dance, the parents' dance, and the speeches themselves. And the actual ending is a celebration. You know, people are dancing. You definitely want to get the kids. It's a huge thing. The kids, especially if they're dancing, is the best. Or sleeping. No, sleeping's the best. Have you ever, I've had some great shots. I see you nodding. Sleeping children? That's gold. Gold, it's great. But the ending section, you really want it to be like the celebration. You really want it to feel like this ending. So you want to show the first dance, you want to show the parents. There's a whole story and history when it comes to wedding. Like, there's a tradition there that's so human, you know? It's like a family is literally handing over their child to another family to create a new family. There's so much history that comes with that. There's so much that goes into that and so much feeling into that. The bride walking down the aisle and her father giving her away. It's a whole new start, you know? So this ending is really supposed to not only feel like an ending, it's supposed to feel like a new beginning. You know, it's like when the fairy tale ends, you don't want to picture Cinderella, oh, that was it, that's all she had. No, you're kind of imagining she had more than that, you know? And the end of a movie feels like not an end, but the beginning of something more exciting. And you want to make sure to kind of give that within the ending for you as well. So when you're shooting the dancing scene and you're shooting different things like that, you want to visually make people feel like that. You want to make people feel it like it's ending, but there's also this new beginning. So I'm going to show you a really quick example of that. So that ending shot with that pan of the city and stuff like that ended on that for a very specific kind of reason. You know, they're from New York City, so they know they're from New York City. They see the city and they see their new life starting. You know, they live there, they live on that island. You know, they're gonna start their family there. Remember how I said a little bit about breaking the rules? You don't wanna break the rules. I break the rules all the time. You have to know the rules in order to break them. So you wanna make sure that you understand why you are not doing certain things. Jump shots. Typically, you don't want to have a shot like seem like it's jumping. You know, so like say I have a wide shot of the audience right here and I'm positioned right here and then I close up right on you and I'm in the same exact position. It's going to feel like a jump. It's going to feel unnatural. It's not really how we like experience the world. It feels just strange and a little jarring. You know, if I'm like right there and I have a wide shot and then all of a sudden it's a close up, it feels like a quick jump. That just doesn't feel natural or flowy or great. But they use jump shots all the time in movies. Someone's getting ready and they're in front of the mirror, they're brushing their teeth, oh, now they're combing their hair, or now they're doing this. That has intention. It has a certain pacing. It makes it feel like a rapid, you know, they're getting their stuff together really quickly. And that's the intention behind editing in that way. So technically the rule is don't have a jump shot, but that's the general rule. That's the rule that you have for in a general concept of how we visualize the world and how we want to feel comfortable all the time. But if you want someone to feel jarred, if you want someone to feel like everything's quick paced and jumpy, then it's fine to use jump shots. But you have to be able to utilize these rules and know why you're not doing something in order to incorporate it with intention later, in order to incorporate it in a way that actually invokes an emotion that you want. Quick and choppy cuts. I cut on the beat a lot, but sometimes I cut off of the beat. As you edit more and more, you kind of get a feel for what feels right. If you edit too much on the beat all the time, it creates this rhythm that might not feel right. But as you edit more and more, you get a better feel for when you want to make those cuts, when you want to make those hard cuts. Sometimes on the beat to emphasize a certain moment or to emphasize a certain emotion, and sometimes off of the beat to make you feel maybe a little off the beat, or to make you feel a little bit less like you're too dedicated to the song and the beat. It actually creates more of a flow if you go a little bit back and forth as opposed to doing one or the other. And if you're never on the beat, it just seems like you just slapped the song down because you're not really editing to the song at that point. So you want to kind of avoid that. Unnecessary color and additive transitions, I avoid that kind of stuff, like the, you know, unless it's used in a certain kind of way. Some people use it as a style and it's part of their video and they use it in a specific kind of way. But if you're throwing it in there randomly, have intention. That is the main point, is always have a reason for why you're using something. Because if you have a reason of why you're using it, then it's probably appropriate. If you're like throwing something in there, you're not really considering it, watch it again, you know? Even step away from it. The best part of editing is to literally, when you've been editing for hours and you just like walk away, you're like, I can't even look at this anymore. It's like painful. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. And you're just like, I can't look at the screen, my eyes hurt, they're bleeding, it's awful. Walk away. I maybe even give it a day sometimes, you know, if you have the day to give it, if you're not on a hard deadline or something like that. When you come back with new eyes, it's amazing what you'll see. Because then you become your own audience. You know, you haven't been looking at it. You're not so close to the tree that you don't see the forest, you don't see the story. So try to avoid these things. Try to emphasize why you would avoid them. And then if you want, use them later. After practicing not using them, after practicing the why nots, use them for actual purposes. And also random use of desaturation. So the black and white, you know how people will do black and white, make everything desaturated, take away the color, make it black and white to give it some kind of dramatic look or something like that. I feel the same way about that, the way I feel about slow motion, is to use it selectively. Like I had one video that I kind of started in black and white and then slowly turned it into color. And it was a very specific reason that I did that, you know? Or if you're doing flashbacks in a sense, and by flashbacks I mean you're not doing everything in chronological order. You're kind of showing a little bit of the end of the day and then the beginning and then back and forth. It's interesting to maybe actually put the past events in black and white or something to kind of note them as a different time period. They do that in the movies all the time. Either something's black and white or they literally color correct it to be something a little bit different. Again, that's intention, that's purpose. There's a reason behind why you're using it, as opposed to just making the entire video black and white just to make it look different, you know? Don't just want to make it look different, want to make it look better, want to make it feel better to the audience and who it is you're trying to appeal to. So I was talking about cross dissolves. I love cross dissolves, don't get me wrong. I said don't overuse them, but I have to say I really like them. I feel like when you use them correctly, they can be an amazing tool. you can actually create a new image out of a cross dissolve. These are literally cross dissolves from my videos that I made a still frame of and exported. So there's a reason. There's a transition happening here, but there's also a new picture being made. You know, it's almost like a double exposure. You know, when you have film, you don't proceed with you don't have it progress, and you actually do double exposure, and you have a picture over a picture, and how that within itself becomes an even more dynamic and interesting picture. Well, it's the same idea with a cross dissolve. You know, you can actually create a new image within that. And even if people aren't seeing it, because if you think about it, this right here is a still image. I created a still image from the cross dissolves that I created within Final Cut. However, when you're watching the video, you know, you only see that actual image for like a split second. You barely notice it. But again, referring back to feeling it. The audience feels these things. The audience feels this transition. The audience did see this shot. Do they know they saw that shot? Probably not. Most likely not unless they're an editor and they're really overly aware of everything that's happening, which honestly, ideally, you don't want them to be. You want them to feel this image. You want them to have seen it without realizing it. And cross dissolves definitely provide an opportunity to do that. And sometimes you use them to cover stuff up because you just have to, because things happen, you know? And when you're editing, sometimes you don't have enough footage, sometimes you just don't have another hard cut that you can do. And they work well for that as well, but ideally what you really want to be doing is using them with intention and using them to create almost another beautiful image within it. So in creating the highlight, so many of the actual videos that I was showing you are highlights or previews to the full wedding. So the highlight is not only a preview to the day, but it's where I like to actually take all of the best shots, or what I feel are the best visually stimulating shots, and put them in the highlight. Because this is the thing you're sending to the bride and groom to get them and their family excited that the full wedding's coming. You know, it's the preview to the movie. I mean, how many movies have you actually gone and seen after you saw the preview and you were like, oh, someone really, you know, okay, the preview was great, you know? Ideally, you want the full wedding to be great and the highlight to be great. But the thing is, when you take all of the great shots and you put them all in one spot, that's gonna be almost the most exciting part, you know? And they're gonna be excited to watch that full video too. Maybe their family doesn't wanna watch that full video, they only want the highlight. So you want their family to see the best part. Because not only do you want their family to experience the best highlighted, most beautifully, visually beautiful things of the wedding, but on top of that, those are potential clients. You want them to see your best work. Whatever they're gonna be showing their family and friends is exactly what you want them to see. You want them to see your best work. You want them to see your best shots in the best view possible. And the highlight allows you for that to happen. And again, the highlight itself, like all the sections and like the full wedding, has a beginning, middle, and end. It has a story. It's the story of the day that you're providing a little nitpick of like what the family can see. Because they're probably not gonna sit there and watch the whole wedding. They're probably not gonna get an opportunity to do that. So this gives them a beginning, middle, and end of the day so that they feel like they saw the wedding video, even though they didn't. So we've talked a lot about DSLRs. The 5D specifically, I mean, I love the 5D. I actually have the 60D, but I've used the 5D for a few weddings, and it's great. I love it. It's beautiful. It has a cinematic look to it. It really has like great light sensitivity and a shallow depth of field that really makes you feel like you're watching an actual movie. Like you saw that pull focus where I had that flower and then I pulled focus to the bride. That was the 5D. Okay, and most video cameras can't do that because they have a smaller chip. So the full-size chip that the 5D has really allows you to kind of like fine-tune and make your video, add little highlights that can really make it seem like it's an actual movie and make them feel like they're actually watching a movie of their lives. I typically shoot with the 5D and then like another HD camcorder because I personally, I know a lot of people who actually shoot weddings just with a DSLR. And that astonishes me. You definitely need more than one shooter, and it's a difficult thing to do. You need to make sure you have rigging, you know, pull focuses and like shoulder mounts and monopods or tripods or sliders. There's a lot that goes into a DSLR shoot because, again, they're not a camcorder. How I was saying about how we experience the world and how our heads bob as we walk around, it's much like the way a camcorder does. The 5D doesn't. If you're hand holding that, it's going like this. It's like vibrating. It's not like bobbing, it's vibrating, and that feels weird. I feel like I'm on an elevator or something. I don't know what's going on. So you need support for that. You need to be able to have like a monopod or some kind of rigging or something like that to control the vibrations that would make somebody uneasy. Because at the end of the day, if that's the visual experience you're getting, then you're not really taking in the beautiful image that this camera can produce. So you have to make sure that if you're thinking about doing a DSLR shoot or anything like that, that you have the proper support that goes along with that in order to really kind of supplement the footage that you're going to have. So these are just some of the specs. It's a still camera, so it's a 21.1 megapixel, things like that. If you guys, anyone want to take pictures just for the actual information itself. The ISO range is awesome. You know, it actually can shoot 1080p movie mode. It has a live view. All this, it's about, is that right now? Yeah, with the lens, it's about $3,300 right now. The pros and cons of it. So awesome HD footage. Beautiful shallow depth of field, a cinematic feel, low light sensitivity that is incredible. I mean, you can, as he was saying, when you bump up or somebody in the audience was saying, when you bump up the ISO, it gets a little bit grainy. So you want to make sure that whatever DSLR you're using, test it and make sure, because every DSLR has a certain kind of ISO range where it's going to get grainy. And you want to figure out for yourself what's too grainy for you before you're using your camera in a low light situation. And you want to make sure to take it out of the camera, put it in your editing system, watch it on your monitor so that you can really see big how grainy it actually is. Because you don't want to go into a wedding, shoot it all on a high ISO, I didn't even need a light, and then you go into the editing process and you're like, oh, I didn't think my footage looked like this. You want to avoid a situation like that. You want to make sure you know exactly what is the ideal ISO, like the max, what's the threshold, because you can get grainy footage. So some of the cons are that it requires rigging. You need external audio, or I believe you need external audio. There are some people who do use the DSLRs and the 5Ds and stuff like that to record audio, but it's just not professional quality audio. And you can do a test for yourself. Honestly, at the end of the day, it comes to like what you believe sounds right. But you definitely need to be recording on the 5D as well when you're recording externally, because at some point you're going to have to sync that up, and you're going to need to have the footage have audio so that you can sync up the better audio later with it. It has a limited recording time. It can record up to like 13 minutes, and then that's it. So if you're at a ceremony or something like that and you're the one shooter and you have this one camera and can only go up to like 13 minutes, you really need other shooters, and you're constantly kind of swapping out cards and stuff like that for like long takes, for long ceremonies and speeches and things, and that can make life a little bit stressful. That's why I always suggest the Canon 5D as like a B camera. At least that's how I specifically use it. But then again, there are so many wedding videographers out there and studios out there that are doing amazing DSLR work. I would actually recommend going on Vimeo, going on YouTube, going on someplace and just actually looking up DSLR wedding or something like that, and look up the amazing videos that are being made, because literally these things look like actual music videos and actual like movies. It's incredible the image quality that these can get. But if you're just starting out, I would suggest a video camera, because it's so difficult to use these in an effective way. You need a crew. You literally need a crew. It becomes a production at that point. It's harder to be a one-man band when you have the kind of limitations that the 5D does in reference to kind of documentary style shooting, which is kind of the run and gun kind of shooting that a wedding videography shoot is. Okay, so in terms of Super 8, this is something that I've definitely incorporated into some of my weddings, and I've shot Super 8 the way I would shoot with a 5D, which is if I'm a one-man band and I have the 5D and I have an HD camera, I have my HD camera with me the majority of the time, and then I have almost like a side satchel thing with the 5D so that I can pull that out with a monopod and get specific shots, like B-roll shots, artistic shots, establishing shots. I like to use it to make the video feel more cinematic. So I'm getting shots that I feel like only the 5D can get and really capture, but I'm getting the fundamentals with the actual HD camera. When I'm shooting Super 8, I do a very similar kind of process where I have kind of the Super 8 slung around me, and I'm using my HD camera, and I'm actually capturing everything, and I'm capturing all the essentials. And then when I see something really romantic or something that I think would look great in Super 8 and would just look so romantic and nostalgic, then I immediately just kind of whip it around and like literally I'm like a cowboy. I just like put it to the side and start shooting with the Super 8. And it can be a lot of fun, and the actual effect itself is so beautiful and nostalgic, and brides really like it. You know, it's something stylized that you can sell to them. This can be a package. I know actually a lot of high-end videographers that only shoot Super 8, and like that's their style, and that's specifically what they're doing. So this was a trend for a while, much like Trash the Dress and stuff like that. But it's also something that you can offer as a package that you can kind of emphasize, just adds a certain kind of style. And I would even suggest maybe going out, if you have any interest in this, getting a Super 8 camera or something and doing a little test shoot and making a little reel for yourself, so that if you want to end up selling it as a package, you can do a little promo and show that to a potential client. Okay, so camcorders, because we can't shoot all weddings with Super 8, unfortunately. There are way too many to discuss. I really can't actually go through all of them. There's just so many of them, especially Sony. Sony has various options on different camcorders. What I would really suggest doing before I really dive into these three that I've kind of highlighted is going down to the video portion of the store. Like, do you guys know where it is? Down the stairs all the way to the left? It is the best thing to do is to go down there and to talk to our experts and to walk around and get your hands on it. It's the best thing about B&H is that we have everything on demo. You can come here, put it in your hands, and really know if you want that camera, because you can read all the specs on a camera that you want. Okay, you can feel like you know it in and out, you know the workflow, you know what size sensor it is, you know exactly what it is. But you know what? You actually don't know if you like the way the menu works and how you work with the menu. You know, you won't know that until you're actually in the store playing with the camera and figuring out what it is that you want to do with that camcorder. You know what I mean? You want to really find out if that's the camera for you, so you can be able to go downstairs and just actually play with things. So one of the cameras I want to mention, I had previously mentioned the JVC GY HM100. Now they have the 150, which is very similar. I'm going to go through that really quickly. It's a very, very small camcorder. The reason I put this on is because it's just very compact, and it makes getting candid moments really, really interesting. This is actually a camera that they used in Afghanistan, and they would actually take it on the flight with them. And you can take the front hood off, and you can take this audio portion off, and you can actually make it seem like it's just some consumer camcorder, but it has professional quality video. And you can get candid shots with that. That's why I kind of emphasize it for wedding videography, because it can be a good B camera or even a main camera, because the quality of the video is good and you can actually be less obtrusive. Instead of having a really big camera or a DSLR with a bunch of rigging, you could have this camcorder and you could be shooting like this and people don't even realize you're shooting it. And you can get different kinds of shots, you can get candid moments that way. When you can really conceal your camera, then you really are the fly on the wall. Then you really are capturing the moments that maybe somebody else wouldn't have been able to, because people were aware of the fact that there was a camera right there. So these are some specs on it and stuff like that. There's actually an instant rebate on it right now where you can save $300. I'm not sure. I think that goes up until March, but don't quote me on that. You might want to check that online. But if you're going to save some money and you're interested in this camera, it's a good thing to do. So some pros and cons of it. So it's small and compact. That's definitely a pro. But that can also be somewhat of a con, because how we were talking about the DSLRs and how they're a little bit smaller and so they're shaky in a certain kind of way. This camcorder is kind of small, so it's like harder to shoulder mount and stuff like that, so it's going to be a little bit shakier. You might want to maybe have a monopod or something like that. I did okay. I used this for a wedding at some point, and I was pretty okay with it. I just learned how to kind of adjust to the camera itself. You know, every camera is going to be a little bit different. It's going to have a different weight to it. It's going to have a different feel. And you just want to make sure you accustom yourself to whatever equipment that you're using. What's also great about all JVC products and all JVC cameras is that they make .mov files, which I love because I use Final Cut. So the JVC 150U, it's small and compact like I was saying, but that can make it for shakier shots, but it can also make for more candid, hidden shots. The removable audio and stuff, actually this is awesome. Look at that. It becomes just that. It becomes just this small little camcorder that people just think that it's, you know, a consumer camcorder and that's it, and you know, they don't think anything of it, and then you can really capture moments that they're going to appreciate so much more later, and they didn't feel like there was a camera right in their face. A little shakier. It's not the best. It's not the best in low light situations compared to something like the 5D or other camcorders that have a little bit larger sensors and stuff like that. But again, when you are in low light situations, you're using lights anyway. Because in any situation, there's just no camcorder that you could use and it looks like there are lights on a person and there aren't. You're going to need some lights. So the .mov files I love, again, because I'm still using Final Cut and I can actually transition those into Final Cut and not have to convert, not have to do any of that. Like, that's always kind of like any time that you can save in the editing process, the better. Because the longer you prolong that, the longer they're waiting for their video and the longer you're pulling your hairs out trying to get to the next wedding. Okay, this camcorder I was introduced to at NAB, and I fell in love with it. It was like my go-to camera. We had 17 cameras in front of us, and I could quote all the specs on all of them and compare and contrast them and everything. And this was a camera I just kept coming back to just because it has the option of getting like a compact flash unit, which you can see right here. And you can actually record up to like 11 hours worth of footage continuously onto that. So all you'd have to worry about is your battery. Your battery can't even last that long, but it can actually continuously go for 11 hours. So what's great about that is, who's ever been like shooting a speech or something and, oh my God, the tape's running out, oh my God, the tape's running out, oh my God, what am I gonna do? I have to swap at some point. Having continuous recording that way is amazing. And then it also has 2 SD slots that are hot swappable, so you can change one out as the other one's still recording. And it'll actually roll over to the next card as well. And there's dual recording. So what's great about that is that you can literally record to both at the same time. And if you're recording to both at the same time, you have an instant backup. That's amazing. That's incredible. I've been on film sets where I was the camera assistant, and my main job was to literally take the footage and immediately put it onto 2 separate hard drives and back it up immediately. This camera is doing that for you. This camera is backing it up for you right away. And that's really, really great. It's a great option to have. Some other things about this camera, it has SDI out. There are like professional options that you can do where you can record out and have the best quality. It has a built-in GPS. I don't know if you would ever use that, but it's cool. Dual XLR inputs, I mean, so you're getting professional quality. You want to make sure that whatever camcorder you do get, you have an XLR input. 2 XLR inputs are ideal because you want to be able to record professional quality audio, and the best shotgun mics and the best mics have XLRs. So you want to make sure to have that within your camcorder so that you're recording the best audio that you can record. Especially, it's one of the ideal things of having a camcorder is that you can have professional sounding audio. So you want to utilize that. Are there any questions, comments, concerns? No? Okay. So just to go over a little bit about the pros and cons. One of the pros, and one of my favorite things about the camera, because, well, basically I still have a DVX100B and I have not let go of SD too much. I shoot HD all the time, but I still don't even specifically own an HD camera. I'm still looking into it myself, and I'll talk to you more about the one I'm looking into. But this one specifically can record SD and HD. It can record standard definition or high definition. And what's cool about that is, I've told you, I've had brides that have told me, please don't shoot me in HD. What do you do when you have an HD camera? She's gonna be in HD, you know? This allows you the option, especially if you're going from a standard definition camera to an HD camera, you can still have that option of having the SD if that's maybe what your clients saw and they preferred it, or what have you. There are reasons to do SD, and sometimes you wanna save space and it's just going online and you're okay with it being standard definition. There are definitely still reasons to be shooting in standard definition.
You can always soften the image.
I'm sorry, what?
You can always soften the image.
You could always soften the image as well, yes. Again, more editing.
Right.
I'd rather shoot it. So it records the compact flash unit or the SD cards, and it can do that simultaneously. The only issues I had with the camera is that the LCD is kind of small, and I rely on my LCD, especially, I like to think of myself as very tall. I don't know how you feel about that, but I'm not, and I'm constantly like this or like that, and I'm moving my camera all over the place, and the LCD is huge to me. I need to be able to see it, and if I'm going like this and I can't see it, it's an issue for me. It's not too small, it's definitely usable, but it's not ideal for me. I like a larger LCD so that I can really see what's going on, especially if I have my camera like this and I'm trying to figure it out. It has a fixed lens, so that in and of itself is a little bit limiting, because if you want to have the option of interchanging your lenses and being able to like swap it, like how the 5D, you can get prime lenses, you can get zoom lenses, you can get a variation and get a lot of different kinds of shots with it. So it has a fixed lens, but again, within this price point and stuff like that, you're not going to find something that has interchangeable lenses, and even that gets a little more costly as you're buying more lenses and doing things like that. And for this kind of work, for me, a fixed lens has always worked out. You just have to make sure it has like a big enough range. A 20x is usually, I think, the best. Like around there is great because you can get really close-up shots and still do wides. Anything less than that can be somewhat limiting. Any questions on the NX5U? Bueller? No, we're good? All right. So I'm going to move on. This is my baby, and I want it. I want someone to give me this. This is the new Sony NEX FS100. I really like this camera. It has a super 35mm sensor. So it has a very large sensor. It's kind of based off of the film format. So it has that shallow depth of field. It has that light sensitivity. It has all those things that we love about the 5D. This is also a great camera to intertwine the 5D footage with, because it mimics it and stuff like that. It's just a great camera. It has so many amazing features. I would actually go online and look up footage for this camera because it's astonishing. They have scenes lit with candles. Like, it's incredible. Definitely look into it if you can. It's about 5600 with the 18 to 200 millimeter lens, but it has an E-mount, so you can actually get different kinds of lenses for it, and you can get adapters if you want to be able to use your 5D lenses on it and stuff like that. You can get the appropriate adapters. I'll also give you my email at some point, so if you guys have specific questions on gear and stuff like that, feel free to email me and let me know. The only issue I kind of have with this camera, and I love it, it has all the things I want. It has the DSLR, which is so important. It can record to SD cards, it's hot swappable, it has all the things that I want in a camcorder. The only real issue I have with it is where the LCD is placed. Again, I'm big on where the screen is for me, especially since I'm going like this with my camera, I'm going like that, I'm trying to do a lot of different things. The LCD on this camera is right, I'll go back to the image real quick. So you see how it's right up top? It's right on, this is the bird's view of the actual camera, so it's right on the top of the camera. That's an issue for me when I want to do this. That's an issue when I'm in the middle of the hora and I feel like I'm in a mosh pit and I'm just trying to get the shot. I don't even know what I'm looking at personally, you know? Their suggestion is to flip the camera upside down and then flop it in post. Me personally, anything that you say in post to me, I'm like, no, I don't want to do anything in post. I want to do it right the first time. It's always the goal, and you're always going to have things that you're going to have to do in post and tweak in post. But ideally, I want to capture things in a way where I don't have to at the end of the day. Especially with wedding videography, you know, sometimes you're shooting continuously. So sometimes you're over here and shooting that, and you're still recording, and you're still recording, and now you're still recording, and then you're still. So you're literally going to have to find that specific shot and like flop it. You know, you're going to literally have to be like, oh, there it is, and take it out, and then flop it, and then put it where you want it to be, and like you're gonna have to flop it to even just view it. One person was like, oh, why don't you just shoot the entire wedding upside down and just flop the whole thing? And I was just like, oh, okay, well that's a resolution, okay. For that to be the only issue I really have with the camera, that's my main issue. There are like things here and there. No camera's gonna be the ideal of every answer that you could ever want in a camcorder, but this one for me comes pretty close. I really like this camera. It's great, it has a great dynamic range. It's really like high sensitivity in low light situations, the interchangeable lens, large sensor. It's just a really great camcorder. I'm very interested in actually obtaining one myself. And it's kind of the baby brother of the Sony F3. Have you guys heard of the Sony F3? That's it's basically a digital camera that Sony came up with, and it's based off of film cameras. It's intended for the DP, the director of photography, who's used to shooting film and is now moving to digital. And it has that super 35mm sensor. It has interchangeable lenses, but it comes with prime lenses, and it's a higher grade camera. It comes with a 35, a 50, and an 85 for the kit. And that's a much more expensive packet, and it's more of the upgrade. But this is literally like the baby brother of that camera with the same sensor. So you're getting really beautiful quality footage off of this small camcorder. So getting to know your camera, this is something that I've kind of been emphasizing. It's really important to know your equipment. Whatever you're using right now or whatever you're planning on using, get to know it, use it, constantly have it on you if you can. Just make sure that you know the ins and outs of your camera, that you know how to get to a setting that you need really quickly, that you can make quick zooms in and stuff like that, that you just really just know your camera almost as an extension of yourself. It's like an athlete, you know, when you become an expert on something or a piece of gear or something like that, it becomes your tool, and you're so used to using it that you can just zoom in real quick and get that little snapshot that you wanted. The only way you can do that is by using it. You know, you can read about a camera as much as you want, you can look at the specs as much as you want, you can talk about the light sensitivity and how pretty the footage is and stuff, but unless you're using that camera and unless you have become fine-tuned on how to use that camera, you're not going to get the kind of footage that you want. It's going to be beautiful HD footage, but you're not going to be using the camera to its utmost. So you want to study your camera, you want to study the different lighting situations. So how I was talking about in reference to the 5D, there's a certain ISO that you want to stop at, but all DSLRs have a different ISO point. So you'd want to test your camera. You'd want to make sure that you know what's the threshold and to try not to go beyond that when you're actually shooting the wedding. So I have a little assignment for you guys. If you guys already have gear, or if you're planning on getting gear or something like that, go home and shoot your family. Go home and just shoot your cat, literally run after your cat. They're actually great to train you because they are quick. Okay, and you gotta really grab at them. But do something where you're even going outside in New York City and getting establishing shots of nothing. You just wanna have it. And you can actually collect a library of footage that way, because if you have random shots of New York City and you're doing weddings in New York City all the time, guess what? That's filler footage right there. That's an establishing shot that maybe you didn't get that day, but that's okay because you have something already within your library of footage. So I would definitely suggest doing something like that, and then edit it together. Try to build a story like what we've been talking about today. Try to do maybe a music montage, or try to do a documentary style. Like, why don't you, I actually would like to do this with my family very much because they're all characters and I love them to death. I want to get them in an interview situation. I really want to go down to Florida where they all flock to, and just sit them down, light them, interview them, get all those great stories that maybe in 20 years I'm not going to be able to have. That's even in itself, that's a package you could sell. That's something that you could do as well. There's so much that you can do with this kind of stuff. There are memories to capture out there, and there are people who are willing to buy your services in order to capture these moments in very specific ways. Okay, so audio options. So the Sennheiser ME66, it's an awesome shotgun mic. It's pretty big, but it's very directional, and it's great. So whatever you're pointing at, that's the audio you're getting. You're not getting this guy coughing, you're not getting this person crying, you're getting that person's speech or the vows or whatever it is that you're actually pointing at. So this is a really great shotgun mic. And I don't know if you guys do any other kind of video production, but this is also a great shotgun mic for being on set. So like a boom mic and stuff like that, if you have a boom and all that kind of stuff, this is also a great shotgun mic to use in reference to that. So it has dual purpose. Of course, you'll need the XLR inputs, which is why I emphasize that it's really important to have the XLR inputs in any kind of camcorder that you have. In reference to the JVC 150U, it has a mini that goes into the camera, but it hooks up into that audio extension that has the XLR inputs. So it does have it and you can take it off, but you just want to make sure to have that option. Okay, so moving on in regards to audio, then there's the wireless lav mic. I'm literally just wearing this for demonstration. And this is exactly the one I have, is the Sennheiser wireless lav mic, and basically I use it for the ceremony primarily. I don't typically mic people for the speeches and stuff like that. I let my shotgun mic pick up on the speeches because they usually have a microphone anyway. They usually have clear audio anyway. So I usually just have it directionally towards them, and that works out for me. But for the ceremony specifically, it's really important, but especially since I'm usually the solo shooter, I'm usually all the way in the back of the room. I don't want to rely on my shotgun mic in order to capture the vows. It's just too precious of a thing that's happening. It's the entire reason that we're there. So you want to make sure to get those. So what I typically do is I take this and I actually put it on the groom, and I put it, they usually have that inner pocket, and you can just take this and wrap it all up, put it in the inner pocket, put it and hide it right under his actual coat, and you're good to go. And it'll pick up him, it'll pick up her, and it'll pick up the person actually saying the vows, whether it be a priest or a rabbi or whoever it is. Okay, so this is a great option. Has anyone ever used the Zoom H4n? No? Awesome. This is a great option for DSLRs. Because the DSLRs, as I said, they don't have the best, highest quality audio, so you might want to actually consider using external recorders. And this is a great option for an external recorder. It takes AA batteries. It has 2 XLR inputs in here, so you can hook up a wireless lav mic to it, you can hook up a shotgun mic to it, and you can hook up both at the same time and record those at the same time. It has a built-in speaker. You can actually use the unit itself to record, like say you're interviewing someone, say you're running out real quick and you didn't even have a chance to hook up a mic to it, it already has a mic on it. You can actually put it in front of the person, record a little snippet of them saying something or anything like that. But it's also really important that when you're using a DSLR and you're getting the external audio, that you're also getting okay audio for the DSLR, because you're gonna need to sync it later. And in order to do that, you're gonna need to make sure that you have good audio on the camera itself, in order to sync it up with the professional quality audio later. So in reference to the 5D Mark II or any other DSLR, I believe you mentioned this, right? You said you had this?
I have,
Yeah. So I would suggest using something like this. Typically what I do is I use that on like a DSLR, and then I'll use like an external recorder like the H4n and sync it up later. Because it's directional enough to get the audio and stuff like that, but if you heard the audio from this and then you compared it to the audio of like, say, the 66 that I was talking about, or the H4n, that's just it's gonna be less noise, it's gonna be crisper, it's just gonna have that higher professional quality. It goes right on top, just has like a little shoe for to be right on top of the camera. It's a little bit directional, and honestly, let's face it, it's pretty cute. I think it's a cute microphone. I would use it maybe just because of that. But what's great about the 5D and stuff like that and using something like this is that when you sync it later, have you guys ever used Pluralize? Pluralize is a great software that will sync it up for you. I'm from the days of trying to sync things up yourself and crying. Anyone? Anyone? Yeah, Elizabeth, I know you know. Yeah, no, I've had horror stories of just like things being completely out of sync and just like watching the mouth movement and being so close to the tree that you literally would just have to walk away and come back, and then you're like, okay. And this just, Pluralize just does it for you. So the reason I say have a microphone like this, like the 400, is so that you have clean enough audio on your DSLR that something like Pluralize can pick it up and sync it up with your audio from your H4n or your audio from your other camcorder that was also recording. This is actually something I'm really excited about and I really love. Have you guys ever used sliders? They're really cool. So sliders kind of give the effects for DSLRs and even like smaller camcorders in general of the smooth pans and the smooth tilts that you would expect from a motion picture. And it's kind of incredible, like what you can do with DSLRs now. And this is what I was talking about when I was saying that, you know, there are video-based production companies there that do high-end weddings and stuff, and they have crews, literally, and they use things like this. And this is the product itself being shot by the product. So you can see this smooth pan and then the smooth tilt down. And what's great about this one specifically, which is the Atlas 10, is that you can have the option of having it horizontal and lying flat so that you have the nice smooth pans, but you also have the option of vertically propping it up so that you can have really cool tilt shots up. And you still have the arm of the tripod, you still have things that you can do, so you can literally move this as you have someone else maybe panning up and you're actually getting a shot that's going like this. You know, that almost feels like a jib shot. Like, that's incredible. That's incredible that we can do that kind of shots now. And this allows you to do something like that. The price point on this is $1473.95 right now, and that's definitely up to date. It's just kind of, I mean, look at the different things that you can do. And I'm gonna show you a quick little video too that really shows the different kinds of shots you can get and stuff like that. But it's just kind of amazing where we've come in regards to these DSLRs, in these like large sensor still cameras that became phenomenal video cameras, and the rigging systems that came out of that. But not only that, we actually have like almost crane looking shots and like dolly looking shots. This is incredible. I mean, people were only capable of doing this with like literally a hefty dolly with a jib on it or something, you know, and now we can take a DSLR and we can make a commercial. You know, I have cinematographer friends who actually have used DSLRs for commercials. He shot a car commercial with an Alexa, a 7D, and a GoPro. I mean, that's amazing. The where we've gone and how far we've come is just astonishing, and the quality video that you can make on a budget is incredible as well. So this is just a little video to show you what's capable with these sliders.
We have all kinds of things, and there is not a single thing we have put out that we haven't found major flaws in it.
Every single one of us, the motion will nitpick every single small thing which is wrong in your clip, and that's great because you always learn, and we always give each other a lot of critique. You know, it never ends, and it's good because we always evolve because of it.
But I think in the back of their minds they're probably thinking that if they're going to show me, they know I'm going to say something. And perhaps that pushes it, because I know that it pushes me, you know, because when I'm really proud to show something off, I don't want them to say, oh, well, maybe you should tweak it like this. So I just make sure I do those tweaks before they have a chance to say it.
You know, our best work, I mean, we have huge issues with it. So, you know, if we could say that, you know, we get a lot of attention and our work is quite good, there's a lot of people that enjoy it, you know, when we put it out there, I think there should be a lot more people critiquing it. There's a lot more that we could be saying that we could be doing different. Ideally, where would I be in 5 years? Well, I'd definitely still be shooting weddings. I love the connections I make. I love the friends I make. I love the stories we can tell. It would probably be shooting less weddings. It'd be more diversity. It'd be time to do projects that are free, our own documentaries, other things. It'd be time to stay with the education side of what we do, to get into other things that are perhaps related to film, but not necessarily shooting.
When I think about doing other things than weddings, which I obviously want to do, I also want to make sure that the weddings will always stay there, because again, there is something about working with real people and, you know, something which is not staged that just draws me and my attention, that you can actually create a real story out of real event and play out those emotions. And, you know, this can never be acted. You know, the best performance in the best movie can never be as real as a real event, and that's what I like about weddings.
Cinemate, more than anything, does what they do because they really love empowering people. They really love giving them different tools.
Okay, so that was a promo for Cinematography through a company that shoots weddings, but you can see just how dynamic these shots become when you add that kind of movement to it. I mean, any movement adds dynamic to a shot, but when you can have that smooth pan and tilt, it just adds production value. It adds that quality that makes us feel like we're at the movies. You know, it really makes us feel like this was a true production and this is a true film. So something else that adds motion to your shots and something else that you can use in order to kind of, where's Mark from Tiffin? What happened, right? We should call him. We should call him. We should let him know. Okay, so the Steadicam Merlin, it's just a great use of adding dynamic shots and stuff like that, like large sweeps and just kind of like pans, and everyone's seen those Steadicam shots that you can't get with anything else, you know, like walking backwards and having a smooth shot. You really have to train yourself how to use it though, because you have to take into consideration that ball in your hands there, and you have to balance it a certain kind of way. So definitely don't whip this out on day one of a wedding day shoot and expect that you're good. You're like, oh, and I got this thing to make steady shots. You definitely need to practice. I have to really emphasize with something like this, like not only know all of your gear, but use this a lot and practice with this a lot, because it's really a technique and it's a dance and it's an art. I mean, there are Steadicam professionals out there, and it really is, it's truly an art form, and it's a profession in and of itself. So it's definitely something you want to be able to control and practice and make sure that you know how to actually use it before you do. All right, that's it. Any questions? On anything else? Any questions at all?
Your email?
My email is Kelly, KELLYM as in Mary, @bhphoto.com. So if you guys want to email me with gear questions, or if you just want to like talk to me about anything, just shoot me an email. Okay. All right, thank you.
For more information, please visit us online, give us a call, or stop by our New York City Superstore. You can also connect with us on the web.